Hey, it's Greg Stanley with the Collector Car Podcast, and we are talking all things Las Vegas Concours d'Elegance at the Wynn Las Vegas. I'm very excited today because we have a lot of cool stuff planned, and right now I've got 3 judges from the Concours, and we are going to kind of just talk about some of our favorite cars from the weekend. This is a very conversational thing, so I have no idea what direction we're going to go in. So I don't know if we're going to talk about little cars, we're going to talk about Duesenbergs or what exactly. So I want to invite or welcome some of our guests here. I've got Mark Moskowitz. Thanks for joining us today.
Greg, thank you very much.
Yeah, we got Stuart Morris.
Stuart Fields. Thank you for inviting me. Appreciate it. But I do like Morris Minors, you know. So.
There you go. There you go. Sorry about that. And then Daytona Rick, not Corvette Rick, Daytona Rick.
Hi, welcome. Thank you for the invite.
All right, well, I appreciate that. We'll find out why you're called Daytona Rick here shortly. We'll get to that in a second. So First off, I wanted Mark to kind of tell us a little bit about, like, what do you do for the Concours? What's your role? And then I thought we'd kick it off with you telling us some of the cars that caught your eye at the Concours, and then we'll just kind of, talk about those cars individually and kind of, popcorn around the room a little bit.
Sounds great. Greg, first of all, thank you for having me on your show.
Yeah, okay. No problem.
We just great to be here. For the Concours, I am an honorary judge. I'm not sure that makes it any different than any of the other judges. I just chip in and judge a class of cars. I was chief class judge of the post-war sports European cars.
Okay.
And asking me a little bit about what my favorite car was, it's like asking me which was my favorite child. I was kind of overwhelmed with the field. There was something for me that I wouldn't turn down. But I'll start with the cars in my class, and several of them. There were some E30s. There was a BMW Turbo, very rare racing car, kind of the epitome of that 2002 era.
Yep.
But then, of course, the real big cars in my class was the best of show post-war, and that was a 235 Delahaye. And this was an interesting car. Delahaye, we all think of Delahaye as a pre-war car, but they actually continued on after the war. They, very much like the early days, they took chassis and gave them to some of the great coach builders. And the one this car went to was a guy named Soucek, and Soucek was a Belarusian, and he was known for outlandish designs. But this particular design catches everybody's eye, a beautiful convertible. What a great car. And obviously they recognized it, became the best of show post-war. But if I have to say my favorite car in the class was a Ferrari Superfast 2.
That was beautiful.
Gorgeous.
And I think everybody loved that car. And a Superfast, there were only 36 of these made. Okay, and Ferrari had 10 years of something called the 250 GTO, and the GT 250s and the GTO being the epitome of that group. And how do you follow that? What do you follow that with? Well, what you follow that was one of the most beautiful Pininfarina styled cars with incredible technology. If you were the Shah of Iran, if you were Peter Sellers, if
right.
you were a Prince this or Prince that, you were able to get one. Nobody else was. And of course, this being the second group, there were 24 first and 12 second. This was the best of the best. Beautiful lines, V12 power, now a 5-speed transmission, but the lines, just an incredibly sexy car.
Yeah, you just gave me a ton real quick. So I'm going to give my first couple comments. I want to hear from these guys over here. That car was unbelievable. Dark blue, tan interior. Was it not originally a 5-speed car? Was it automatic?
It was originally a 5-speed.
It was, okay.
The first Superfast were 4-speed, and they say all the 12 second Superfast 2 were 5-speed, but somewhere in the middle was the transition.
Yeah, so that's great because if you go to YouTube, you'll see some of my favorite cars from the Concours, and that Superfast was one of them. And I actually stayed away from what I thought would be the best in class, best of show, that kind of stuff, because I thought, all right, those are already going to get a lot of coverage. Let me pick some cars that are a little bit different. I also love that BMW Turbo. That was like my honorable mention car. But what's cool about that is, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe all the decals in the front were backwards, like an ambulance, so that if that turbo is coming up behind you, you can read, I got a turbo behind me, I got to get out of the way, which is hilarious that they would do such a thing, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Well, what about you guys? What do you think of those three cars?
I like Mark. That was one of my favorites, the super fast. And people don't realize that car, when it was introduced, as Mark said, it was only for titans of industry and royalty because it was double the price of the 275 GTB4, which was probably the most expensive car at the moment, and a Lusso. And imagine if you will, there's 400 horsepower, and they were made between 1964 and 67. And the first series, the first 25, were the ones that were coveted by, like I say, royalty. And that color combination was just stunning.
Beautiful.
I also liked, I'm not too knowledgeable about the Duesenbergs, but the Model X, which was absolutely stunning. That too was blue with red interior. And you're talking about a car in 1927 with those colors. I mean, that was pretty radical for that time. And the design of that car is just a stunning car. And then there was a Lamborghini there, a Diablo, that was a very unusual color, a root beer, metallic root beer color with like a brown interior, dark brown interior. That was stunning too. I mean, I judge mostly Ferraris and Italian cars and Porsches, so I'm a sports and exotic car guy. So I lean towards those type of cars. So the collection in the show was just outstanding.
I believe that Countach was the last Countach made, if I'm not mistaken.
No, you're talking about the
Diablo. I'm
Diablo.
talking about Diablo.
I said Countach. I'm sorry. The Diablo was the last one made, I believe.
So I have to talk about the Diablo and the Duesenberg because you guys picked another two that made my top 10. But I want to hear from Daytona Rick. I want to hear your comments on what we've talked about, but also first tell us, why are you known as Daytona Rick?
Well, my favorite car is the Ferrari Daytona Spider. Hanging around with the Ferrari Club for 30 years. They nicknamed me. You go, that's your favorite car, Daytona Rick, and it's stuck. So people go, oh, you like Daytona Beach, Florida, or you're a NASCAR driver? And I was like, no, Ferrari. So that's how I got my nickname.
How many Daytonas do you have in your garage?
I have one, but it's a tribute. It's
That's
a
right.
Miami Vice tribute to the Ferrari Pininfarina design. So it's a Corvette-based car, painted up, red, Ferrari red with black and red interior. So I take it to the show. I'm going to kind of say bastard child between the Corvette Club and the Ferrari Club because the purists don't like me, but after they find out that I built it myself, I didn't pay for it to be done, they're like, okay, you're accepted. And I show it for what it is. It's a tribute. You open it up, it's a V8 engine in it. So that's my baby. I had it for 33 years now, and I had other cars since, but I sold it once, bought it back, and said, nope, it's staying.
Well, if we base that, then Stuart should be probably Ferrari Stuart, and I said you should be Allard Mark, but I know you corrected me the other day. You said I actually have more Lotuses so you should be Lotus Mark, right?
Well, how about British?
British Mark.
British Mark.
Sir Mark.
Okay.
Sir
British
Mark.
Mark. Okay.
Sir Mark.
I like that.
Sir
Thank
Mark. Very nice. All right. So one thing I do want to say about your Daytona tribute is you shared some pictures with me, I don't know, a year ago or so, where you got some real Daytona seats for it, right?
Correct.
Very nice. All right. Well, just keep doing that. Get the real engine. Eventually get the real VIN stamp, or whatever, and you'll get there.
If I win this big lotto, maybe I'll get the real one. But in the meantime, I'm enjoying. I have driven real Daytonas. I drove for RM Auction for 10 years, so I've driven a lot of the Ferrari cars and a lot of the other exotics. So not on the racetrack or anything, but at least I can say I've driven those cars.
Well, tell us what are your thoughts on some of the cars that we've mentioned already, and then add a few more if you would.
Well, I love the Delahaye as a whole. They got the sexiest European lines in my eyes. So there's several Delahayes. I couldn't pick out one over the other. I'm a hot rodder by heart. There was a car that, to me, a tribute of Big Daddy Roth.
Yeah.
Yes.
A concept cars, had the bubble top. I fell in love with that car.
That
And
car was
unfortunately-
also at Pebble, too. That car was at Pebble.
Yeah.
They did a tribute for him at Pebble.
That was an oddball car that I really enjoyed there. The Mercedes 540, classic all the time.
Yeah.
Our class was Corvette, and they had a black on black 63 split window that was the our class winner, and that was a gorgeous car. There wasn't a car on the field. This was a very impressive field that we had here at the Wynn. So I would have taken anything that was on that field today.
I was chief class judge of Japanese cars, which I normally don't judge, and I was super impressed. There was one car there, one of the first Hondas to enter into the country in 1970, AN 600. It looked like a clown
Yeah.
car, but this guy, that's all he does is restore these type of cars, and it was radically original. I mean, he had the light. There was a light that fits in the glove box. He told me he paid like $500 for a little bit of light. He had every option with that car. It was super original. He won best in our class. And then there was a Z car. I remember when the Z cars came out. I was in elementary school, and I lusted after that car. It was such a gorgeous design, and that actually helped to put Nissan on the map. That car, you could not get that car. There was a long wait for that car. It was very affordable for a person who was a sports car person, and it was gorgeous, and it's just timeless today. Its design is timeless today. So that car was beautiful too. So brought back a lot of memories.
That's really great. Yeah, now I need to talk about a couple of the cars you guys mentioned. First, the 63 split window, black on black. Stay tuned, because Corvette Mike, that is his
car.
business name. That's his car. I mean, you got Corvette Mike, you got Daytona Rick. I mean, it's just kind of nuts here.
Sir Mark.
Sir Mark.
Ferrari Stuart.
Ferrari Stuart. Yep. So stay tuned for that. But then, Stuart, you mentioned two really cool cars. So I think it was a 1927 Duesenberg
Model X.
So what I have found is the Americans can never, or very rarely, can we do dark blue with red interior well. Usually if you see it, it's like, but Europeans do it great, and that Duesenberg really pulled it off. And that was a prototype car for a car show that, one of the big car shows, it didn't actually have windshield wipers on it because they didn't need it because it was for the car show. And that boat tail was a prototype design study, which would then become the Auburn Boat Tail Speedster, which there was one right next to it. So what a way to lay out the field, right? What a great way to do it. And then I have to go to the Diablo. So the Diablo, the last 42 cars, they were called the UPS cars because 20 were brown and 20 were gold, right? UPS, brown, whatever. And they're limited. There's only, 20 of each. So apparently that was the very last one. I did check the data plate. It said number 40. So if there were indeed exactly 40, that was the last Diablo ever produced. Looked like it had never been driven because it was just immaculate,
What only had, I think they said it only had like
a couple hundred miles.
Yeah, that's it. Like 200 miles, like really low. It's a trailer queen, a true trailer queen.
What a shame.
Yeah. What's funny, though, is I didn't know about those cars until about, 6 months ago. And I'm in middle of nowhere, Midwest, meeting with a potential client, and he has one of the gold cars. So he educates me on the whole thing. And for the gold cars, there's only two that have the rear spoiler. Of the 20, only two of them had the rear spoiler. Well, then I'm at a restoration shop. I'm just kind of hanging out, looking around in Ohio. And in the back, covered with a layer of dust, is a gold Diablo with a spoiler. So of the two, those are the only two I've ever seen, which is such a weird, small world. And then I saw this one. I said, I got to take a look at that. So absolutely gorgeous. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen them before. I've judged at Concorso Italiano, and they have a massive Lamborghini section. And there's always one or two every few years or whatever. But Lamborghinis, I love Ferraris, and Lamborghinis are real attention getters.
Yeah.
As are Ferraris also, but next level Lamborghini for gaining attention.
Yeah, right. All right, Mark.
I'll digress here a little bit and be a little controversial, okay?
All right.
We're talking about cars, not necessarily the cars are of distinction, but are the differences of distinction. That is, when you had the Vipers, there were so many Vipers,
Yes.
and there was an addition that was maybe a little different trim, or a Countach with maybe, or a Diablo with maybe a little different color. What do you really think of that?
From a enthusiast, I love the variety and the coolness of it. Mm-hmm. From a buyer's perspective, I don't like the overinflating the price upon that, to do that.
Premium.
The premium, so I love the results. I don't necessarily love the initial motivation.
Yeah.
I remember the interview when the Countach came out. Morley Safer did a 60-minute interview on 60 Minutes.
That's a great interview.
And they interviewed the chief of operations. I can't remember his name. And Morley Safer said, there's no room for luggage. He said that the man that owns and can buy a Lamborghini has someone following him with his luggage. So that's why those cars really stand out. I mean, the colors were radical for the time in the Lamborghinis, and the Miura. I mean, that was just today. It's just a stunningly designed car. Any model that they came out with was just met with huge popularity right away.
Well, probably the biggest, offender of special edition packages would be Porsche, right? Yes. At the end of every model run, and it's like they come out with crazy, amazing stuff that I wish that was the whole run. Not just the last like special edition, like the 911R or the Speedster. Just make that regular production. Not this. We're gonna nickel and dime you at the end there.
Well, yeah, I do agree. They saved the best for last, or saved what's perceived for the best for last. But now I'll be controversial again. Take that Speedster. I mean, is that Speedster with its uncomfortable seats and a little less padding, little less this, little less that, really that much better than the Cabriolet?
Yeah, but it's such a cool looking car.
That's it. It's gorgeous.
It's so cool, man. And like in any model, the first and last are worth the most money usually of any model. And that was the last. Well, they came out with a '94 Speedster, and now the one today is absolutely gorgeous too. It goes for huge amounts of money. 2019, they only made like 400 of them. So it's a unique design, so.
Well,
cool.
I need to pick out one sports car and one muscle car from the show field that they weren't necessarily special editions to try to get, another, whatever amount out of your pocket, but they were cool. They were on the show field. So there was that 69 Camaro Z28 in Duke Blue.
Beautiful.
And that was not a factory color for the Camaro, but it was a GMC color. And I do a little thing called keep cash or collect. And I asked the viewer, would you keep cash or collect that one? And I said, if this was not this color car, I would cash it in because I think we're about to reach a bubble. I think, things will start going down. Not a lot necessarily, but I think that car will get hit. The fact is that Blue Devil Blue, oh my gosh, I'm like, never sell this car. This thing's great. The other one was that 1960 Corvette, the white with the turquoise interior, and it had the turquoise side cove, which is one of 8 or 9 from the factory that were documented like that.
Correct.
That, it was just stunning. Like, I don't care if it's one of 9 or one of 9,000. It was just stunning looking at that car, the color combo.
I own a 1960 Corvette, and it's Tasco turquoise, which is a turquoise blue with turquoise interior. So I was really attracted to that car. And that car had an automatic transmission in it. It looked like. So that was, believe it or not, those cars now with automatic transmission, no one wanted them. You always wanted a stick. Now people, because the people that are attracted to them, they may have a hip replacement or knee, so they'd rather have an automatic now. So the tides have turned, and those cars, the automatic cars in that model, and those models of Corvettes are worth a lot of money now. They're very valuable.
Yeah, and that car had been owned by the same family for 49 years, which is another reason I was in love with that car. I just thought, that is amazing.
Gorgeous.
Long-term ownership is always an extra point for any car owner.
Yes, absolutely. And it's been driven, it's been shown, it's been judged, all sorts of stuff.
They drive it.
Yeah, they drive it.
They put the miles on every time.
Corvette people are very passionate. The car that I own, that I bought, the guy interviewed like 10 people, and he picked me out from... He interviewed people to buy his car. So, yeah, he had owned it.
That's good.
I think he owned it like 35 years or whatever. So,
did you have to have a resume for that interview?
No, but I thought it was really funny. He said, "I'll get back to you. I've got to talk to about like 5, 6 other people. You're like the 4th." And I thought, this is kind of odd. And then he called me like about 2 weeks later. He said, "You're the guy." So I've had that car for about almost 20 years now.
Wow, very nice.
Yeah, it's a beautiful car.
Yeah. When you used me as a reference, he called me.
Thank you, Sir Mark.
A little bit, right, Mark?
That's why I call you Sir Mark.
If you get a reference from Sir Mark, you should be doing okay, right? All right. So
here's something else that was unique at the show. We always say the mural was the first supercar. In my eyes, we had 3 examples of the American Vector. And the American Vector and the Celine S7 to me were the first muscle cars. The supercars that they had.
American
supercars. And we had 3 examples. A gorgeous, I call it fly yellow, black, and a silver one. And how often do you even see a Vector, let alone 3 of them together?
Yeah, so
That was quite a sight.
they only built 36 total between two generations. Be sure to check out, because we're about to do a deep dive in Vectors here shortly for this podcast, because I actually toured the Vector plant in 1995 or so. So I'm going to throw up pictures I took, horrible pictures I took when I was, 22 years old, touring the Vector plant, and we're going to do a deep dive here shortly. So very, very cool. One thing I want to know, because we got to wrap it up here in a little bit, what was the craziest car on the show field that you just fell in love with? Think about that for a second. I didn't prompt you on this, and I'm trying to think of myself. One, well, it looks like Daytona Rick has one ready to go.
It's got to be the Ed Roth
The Roth
car.
car.
To me.
That
was
was
a
crazy.
unique one-off car. Everything else was, you've seen them before, but that was a standout in my eyes.
Was it the rat thing that had
Yeah,
the
it
double-
was. It was a
No,
candy
it had the
apple red.
bubble. Candy
Yeah,
apple red
I
with the
saw the
bubble
car,
inside.
but I was trying to think of the Ed Roth car that had the bubble.
Well, he had several. The Beatnik Bandit was a brown
was
and
a
white,
Beatnik
and his famous yellow Mysterian.
Oh, yeah, there you
And
go.
this reminded me very much of the Mysterian.
It was awesome.
It was an awesome car.
But for me, the special car there was the Lola street car. The Lola
Oh,
street
that was
yeah.
nuts.
That was a nice car.
That was on the parade this morning. That was
Yes.
crazy to hear that.
I mean, here's a car that's built by Eric Broadley. And when I was watching the United States Road Racing Championship, the early Can-Am series, there were these gorgeous cars called Lola T70s, and they were beautifully smooth. They had Chevy engines in the back, and they were. I remember Mark Donahue's Sunoco Blue.
Oh, yeah.
Lola T70, just a beautiful car, and this was the car, that you could get for the street. And then, of course, Ford was so impressed with Eric Broadley's design that they used him as a consultant on the Ford GT.
Wow. Yep. All right, we heard from two of the four here. Stuart, do you have one?
I can't think of any oddity one. I'm trying to think of it.
Doesn't
the
have
whole
to be
field.
odd. Just one that kind of blew you away, maybe. Maybe that's a better way to put it. Could be totally stock, but you just... All right, I'll come back to you. I'll tell you mine.
Okay.
What's yours, Greg? Come on.
So I just, the supercars that were represented, the hypercars was really crazy. I mean, you had at least two Koenigseggs. You had a handful of Paganis. You had, a Bugatti EB110. There's only two of those in the country, and this was one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a commemorative car, a commemorative package that was just beautiful. So many. They had some of the crazy Lamborghinis out there. And the one I loved, I just fell in love with it, was this Pagani. It was a BC Roadster. And I fell in love with it because it was like a dark blue carbon fiber, had a red stripe. It's just a gorgeous car to begin with.
I've got one, the boat tail McLaren.
That was also another night.
You talk the Speedtail?
Speedtail. Sorry, Speedtail.
It's like
Speedtail.
boat-tail McLaren.
Yeah,
That'd be
it was
crazy.
Speedtail. I'm getting
That was nice, but I have to admit, the blue carbon fiber was
Oh, the
outstanding.
Pagani was.
When the sun hit that car.
Yeah. So the Speedtail.
I mean, what you're talking about right there is just any street in downtown Miami.
Exactly.
know.
You're right.
Right.
It's true.
But I'm from Cincinnati, so I don't see them that often.
We see rusted cars in the Midwest.
Mark, in Miami, remember we had like 20 of them one year?
Not 20, but we had 12 Paganis one year.
Yeah.
And, of course, Mr. Pagani came and appeared.
Oh, nice.
Right.
Nice.
Okay.
Quite a celebration.
Well, I will say that McLaren Speedtail, I never cared for it in pictures. I thought it was okay, kind of different. And we had a silver blue one at, I think it was our Scottsdale auction. And as soon as I saw that in person, I was like, oh my gosh, that thing's incredible. It's unbelievable.
Very cool.
Yeah, and I saw it go out slowly. I mean, it was just really, really cool. So, and it's got the center seat position with the, flanking on either side. So very cool. That's actually a car I thought that would end up in Jay Leno's garage because he has the F1. And I was thinking, well, what would eventually, but never happened. So
You never know.
You never know.
Jerry always
You
comes
never
up with
know.
some unique cars.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the end of our time here. Any other last minute questions or comments? I mean, other than it's just an incredible show that we just had yesterday.
I was going to say, have to hand it over to Stuart and to Gary putting the show together. It was a fantastic show. They're going to grow it. Next year, it's going to be tied in with Formula One.
Yep.
This thing is, everybody should come out to this show eventually. It'd be fantastic.
This show is first class as it is. If it didn't improve next year, it'll be
Even better.
over the top.
Stuart said, I put this together in 5 months. Imagine what I can do in a year. Now, we didn't get to the food. The food was unbelievable.
The hospitality, the Wynn Hotel is top notch. We all
Yeah.
know that
Yes.
to begin with.
Yeah.
Like I said,
the
first
people
class.
here, everybody was so courteous, very professional. Stuart and the team, they did fantastic. Like you said, 5 months. What's going to happen for next year when the Formula One comes up?
Unbelievable.
I think the professionalism was what people mentioned to me, and you started to comment on that. That is, everyone you asked was knowledgeable and willing to help. And it turned out those were caddies who were the class hosts. So think those guys are professionals at dealing with people, professionals at leading people around, and a lot of times when we judge a class, you kind of have to round up the owners. Boy, they had the owners there. Everything was so well organized. The show went off so well. They did something that I've seen other concours try and not really succeed well at. They gave awards at car side for everybody. So everybody got a chance, for 1, 2, and 3 in the class, got a chance for a moment in the sun, and it came off very smoothly.
Yeah.
Stuart's like a man of details. I mean, for him, like you said, to pull this off in 5 months, and everything was organized and well taken care of, and everyone was happy.
And
It's
the
just a
quality of the
fabulous show.
cars.
Yeah.
I mean, the quality to get those cars here. And I have to admit, the quality of the judges. I mean, it took a lot in 5 months. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, and what's great is there's so much room to grow. Not that you want more cars, but there was so much space. It's probably the first Concours I wasn't shoulder to shoulder with someone. I mean, it's just unbelievable setting for it. So, well, thank you for joining us on the Collector Car Podcast.
Thanks,
Ferrari
Greg.
Thank you for
Stuart,
having us.
Daytona Rick, Sir Mark. Thank you so
We
much.
got to come up with a name for Greg now.
I don't want you to do that, Rick.
Right.
We will.
All right. Thanks, guys, for joining
Thanks,
us.
everybody.
Thank you.